Welcome, sports fans, to another exciting edition of Sports Talk with McKimmy. This is the loose cannon David McBee, along with the Zen Master Mike Hemme. We got a bunch of stuff to talk about in the world of sports this week, and of course it's March, so right off the bat, we got to talk a little March Madness. So the Zen Master and the loose cannon, we're going to give our picks. I would stress, don't go out and make bets on our picks, even though we are very informed individuals. I would not encourage you to go spend money on our picks. But, just to kind of start off, tournament time, we got the South. Coming out of the South, Zen Master, I got really not a whole lot of upsets coming out of the South. Of course, I did pick Buffalo over Miami, but then I have them losing in the very next game. I also picked Wichita State defeating Arizona, but honestly, out of the South, I think it's going to come down Kansas and Villanova. They're just too strong. Between Kansas and Villanova, I got the Kansas Jayhawks making it to the Final Four.
And I got to say one thing before I start. Throughout the season, watching basketball, the Gales, I think it's the Blue Gales of Mount St. Mary's. They're a very good basketball team. They played for the championship against Gonzaga. I watched this team. They were 27-4, and they did not make the tournament. That's the biggest snub to me. That's out of the way. All right. Just like you, Dave, I have Kansas and Villanova meeting up in the regional finals, but I have Villanova. I think it's their year. They're hitting on all cylinders. I know Kansas is the number one seed, the only team in the nation to win 30 games, the only team to win more games than UALR, which we'll get to in a minute. Like you, the only upset I have really in the first round out of this region is Hawaii, 13 beating 4. But in the end, Villanova stamps its ticket to the Final Four. And in the West, congratulations to Oregon for winning its first ever number one seed. I think they're going to ride it all the way to the regional finals. Other than that, don't see a lot of upsets. I think Texas A&M is going to knock off Oklahoma in the Sweet 16. They will meet Oregon. Oregon will then knock off Texas A&M, and we're going to have a Kansas-Oregon matchup on one side of the bracket in the Final Four.
Well, out of the West, I do have a couple. I do have one big upset out of the West, and that would be Baylor and Yale. I did go ahead and go with Yale. Of course, first time they've been in there 50 years. What was the Cuban Missile Crisis, I think you mentioned. I think they're going to win it, but it's going to be one and done. They get the one victory, then they get knocked out by Duke. Overall, I just think Duke and Oklahoma are just too strong to beat, and I think it's going to be Duke that's going to punch their ticket to the Final Four out of the West.
All right, so you got Duke and Kansas, and I have Villanova and Oregon. So we're totally opposite on that. I don't think we're not as different on the other side of the bracket. When we get to the Midwest, I know we have one thing in common. I think we still have one thing in common. The 5-12 upset, and there's bound to be one that we haven't picked, and this may not be it, but I see Little Rock not only defeating Purdue, but taking, and rightly so, it's been pointed out that Purdue they're a big team, and Little Rock could have trouble, but what a job Chris Beers in his first year has done with the Trojans, taking them to a 29-4 record, 19-1 in the Sun Belt, Sun Belt champions, balanced attack. You're going to see two guards that average 13 points, and then a bunch of other contributors who average in single digits. I think that's going to take them to the Sweet 16, where they will succumb to Virginia, who will meet Michigan State in the regional finals, and I think Michigan State then punches its ticket to the Final Four.
Well, I did pick a couple upsets coming out of the Midwest. Of course, I had UALR defeating Purdue, but I have them after that first game, winning the first one and then get knocked out in the round of 32. Just like you said, just great for UALR to be back in the NCAA. It's been a while since they've been there, but great to see them in the NCAA. Very balanced team, like you've mentioned. I have Gonzaga defeating Seton Hall as an upset, and but out of the Midwest, honestly, I got Virginia and Michigan State. Virginia to me is just too strong. I got Virginia winning out of the Midwest and going to the Final Four. And then out of the East I had a couple upsets out of the East. Or actually, I'm sorry, out of the East, I think it's just going to play straightforward. I really didn't have any upsets at all coming out of the East. I do think it's going to come down to North Carolina and West Virginia. I think North Carolina wins in the East. So in the Final Four, I got North Carolina and Virginia, Kansas and Duke, and then ultimately I got Kansas-Virginia final.
Right, and I think the only thing that we have different in this part of the bracket, and I'll just say this: when I look at the East, the tournament committee looks like they did a very nice job with this part of the bracket because, like you say, I cannot see any upsets really to speak of, any major upsets in this. I do see Xavier meeting up with North Carolina rather than West Virginia in the regional finals. I see Kentucky making it to the Sweet 16 where they'll lose to North Carolina. But anyway, North Carolina and Xavier meet. North Carolina defeats Xavier, and North Carolina will play Michigan State in the Final Four. And when they play Michigan State, they will lose. And Michigan State will earn its way to the championship game where they will play Villanova. So that's my pick for who makes it to the game. I'll tell you who's going to win it when you're done.
All right, I'm going to go, Kansas, Virginia. I got them in the final. I think on April 4th, it's going to be Kansas 68-61 over Virginia. Kansas wins the national championship this year is my pick.
Right, and one of the things that, looking at your bracket, I would love to see North Carolina and Kansas. I think that would be a great matchup. Kansas has won the last three matchups in the NCAA tournament. I think it'd be a great story to see Roy Williams coaching for a national championship against his old school. But of course, that's not the matchup I have. I have Michigan State and Villanova. I think this is Jim Wright's year. I think it's Villanova's year. I think they win the national championship 78-72. Victors cutting down the nets. Champions Raleigh Massimino will be celebrating in heaven on Monday, the first Monday in April.
Well, I'll tell you, Zen Master, this is the fun part of the year with the NCAA. It's an exciting time of the year. Everyone's got their brackets going, a lot of excitement. We've had some good discussion on the NCAA, and our producer's telling us we've got to go to break right now, but we'll be right back on Sports Talk is McKinney. When we come back, we're going to keep talking some NCAA, but we're going to do a little blast from the past when we get back here on Sports Talk is McKinney.